Alon, you're a play-by-play guy.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you come down on talking about a no-hitter while it's still going on?
I think you can say it. I mean, it's not a perfect game. I think you can say after, especially through 6 innings. I think you can say, "Hey, he's no hit them." I don't have a problem with it.
Well, the reason we bring this up is because currently, during Game 4 of the World Series, Christian Javier of the Houston Astros, through 6 innings, is pitching a no-hitter. They have the graphic up, but there, I have been listening to the whole play-by-play, so I can't say if Joe Davis has been
He
saying it or
did.
not. Oh,
He
he
said
mentioned
it.
it.
He said it
He,
right when they went to break, but he
well,
hadn't. He hadn't really said it until they went to break. Right now.
but he said it subtly. So he said he's not.
Yes.
So he didn't really bring up a no hitter, but he just said through 6 innings he's. Well, he said it. He basically said he's pitched a no hitter so far.
Mm-hmm. Yes. He
So
said no hit. I think is what he
do
said.
you believe in the play by play curse?
No, I think the players on the field and the coaches on the sidelines control everything. We don't have
All right, and
anything to do with it.
if they give it up, it's going to be Joe Davis's fault.
It will be Joe Davis. Everyone will say Joe Davis. Why'd you have to say that? You could have a 9 inning complete game shutout with a no hitter. I don't think he's going to go 9 innings no matter what though. Dusty will probably pull him.
I,
He's pitching well.
you got to leave him in there.
You do. No, with a 5-run lead, you leave him in there until he's vulnerable, and he hasn't looked vulnerable yet tonight.
I think you leave him in there for history.
Okay.
There's been a no hitter thrown in the World Series before, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. What? There's been perfect games in the World Series before, right? Don Drysdale, doesn't he have? He have World Series. I want to say at least. No, he has a no hitter in the World Series. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's
This is where I need my host of Tolbert and Copes, Adam Copeland, to tell me some baseball knowledge.
It would have been in the 1960s,
Yeah.
I think, when Drysdale did that. Yeah.
Speaking of which, so you've been watching this World Series. What'd you think last night? So speaking of Dusty leaving guys in for too long, did Dusty leave in Lance McCullers in for too long, tipping his pitches? Which McCullers and Dusty both said that wasn't the case, but you asked baseball people and they said he definitely was tipping his pitches.
Yeah, I mean, if he was, which definitely seems like not the consensus, but the majority of people believe that. I don't know. You know what? At that point, they had lit him up a bit, and they could have pulled him early. Actually, I think in the long run of the series, and Dusty's been around for a long time, I think he actually made the right decision by leaving McCullers in. Because when I was watching, I went, yeah, game one, not game one of the series, but game one in Philly. The place is a madhouse. They're going crazy. They have a huge run production out of their offense. And it's just like, all right, leave McCullers in as long as he can go. Don't burn yourselves out and play for the rest of the series. I kind of think that's what it is. Some people might think, oh, it's a little defeatist. You're getting rid of one game and leveraging the rest on the rest of the series. But it's a 7-game series,
Exactly.
or possible out of 7 games for a reason. So, that's smart.
Yes. Well, we'll keep you posted on any updates. This game will probably end while we're still on stream. So right now, the Houston Astros have a 5-0 lead, and Christian Javier hitless through 6 innings. So we will keep you abreast, as Steven laughs at me every time I use that choice of words. Welcome to Just Your Opinion, man. Alon Desai filling in for Stephen Langford during the week. Stephen will be back on Sunday. But Alon, have you ever seen, and we were talking about it last week on Wednesday, I was kind of skeptical of the amount of trades that would be made at the trade deadline. Usually there's a few, and with the offseason that we saw this previous offseason, we didn't know if things were going to get crazy towards the trade deadline. We saw a few trades. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey was dealt, Robert Quinn was dealt, and there's always rumors. There's always a ton of, this is where I hate Twitter this time of year, and I usually hate Twitter all the time, especially now. But I hate Twitter because I am addicted to finding out updates. I want to know what Rappaport and Schefter are saying. That's why I'm always glued to my phone during the free agency frenzy of football. I can't stand it, but it's just so exciting. At the same time, it's always a big letdown come NFL trade deadline because in years past, it's always been a lot of talk and nothing. A few trades here or there. There's been some monumental trades in, previous years. Obviously, the Herschel Walker trade for the Cowboys to get better to build their Super Bowl dynasty. You got Eric Dickerson getting traded, Halloween going from the Rams to the Colts. Jalen Ramsey traded years ago. Carson Palmer, saving the Raiders season,
Yeah,
kind of.
kind of.
Yeah. So there's always a few, but never at the volume that we saw on Tuesday. I was shocked with how many big deals were made, and honestly, some head scratchers, that some stuff that I didn't even comprehend or kind of didn't make sense to me. Teams that did go for it, teams that didn't go for it. We'll talk about everything that happened in Week 8 as far as the games, but for right now, the trade deadline. Let me just go through all of the deals that were made on Tuesday and prior to Tuesday on Monday. It started with Roquan Smith, who a week ago was sad that his buddy Robert Quinn was traded to the Eagles. Well, he gets traded too. He goes to the Baltimore Ravens when he had a trade demand in training camp. He finally goes to a new team. Then Tuesday hit, and then a plethora of trades were made before the 1 o'clock Pacific deadline. TJ Hawkinson traded in division to go to the Minnesota Vikings from the Detroit Lions. I can't remember the last time I saw a in division trade. You have to go back to like maybe Donovan McNabb going from the Eagles to the Redskins. So that's a weird one. Chase Claypool going to the Bears from the Steelers. You had to believe that the Packers have to be kicking themselves. They were late in that deal, and at the last second, the Bears swooped in, and the Steelers chose the Bears because they thought they were the worst team and going to give them a better draft selection. So Aaron Rodgers has to be pissed about that one. William Jackson going from the Commanders to the Steelers. The biggest one, I thought, Bradley Chubb being dealt for a first-round pick to the Miami Dolphins. Chase Edmonds goes in that deal as well, so he'll be a Denver Bronco, especially after they beat the Jaguars. I mean, we'll talk about more of that deal, but Jeff Wilson Jr., with Christian McCaffrey being on the Niners now, he's expendable, so he goes to the Miami Dolphins. Calvin Ridley suspended the whole entire season for gambling on a game between the Falcons and the Jaguars. He goes to the Jaguars, funny enough. And then the last one that was done minutes before the trade deadline ended, Nyheim Hines goes from the Colts to the Bills. 10 trades total, the most we've ever seen in a single day for the trade deadline. Your thoughts, Alon?
It was insane. I don't remember a trade window or trade deadline day like this in my lifetime. I mean, maybe there has been before, but just as far as like I've been paying attention very closely, I just haven't seen anything like this. My favorite trade, I don't know if it'll work out the best, but my favorite trade was definitely out of the Tuesday was definitely the Bradley Chubb trade. Yes. I love that trade. I mean, they get back a 5th-round pick. Okay, they give up Chase Edmonds and a first-rounder and a 4th-rounder. But, I mean, and the first-rounder is 2023. The 4th-rounder is a year after that, so in 2024. So, I think you're getting a ton of value in Bradley Chubb. I mean, he's a tremendous pass rusher. That's a great trade. I really like what the Niners did with Jeff Wilson. The fact that he's expendable, even though McCaffrey has had injury history, he's had some injuries here and there. But the fact that they don't really need Jeff Wilson anymore, and the fact that they're able to turn him into a 5th-round pick in the next year's draft, Miami really is going for it. It looks like they're loading up. So they go out and get Jeff Wilson. They get, with a bigger name, obviously, Bradley Chubb. But I like what the Niners were able to do. They give up a boatload of picks and all kinds of assets for Christian McCaffrey, but they're able to flip something that maybe is not as favorable for them anymore and do at least a 5th-round pick. So I really like that. I was expecting Claypool to get traded. I did not think he would go to Chicago, you kind of alluded to, Derek. I thought he would go to the other NFC North team. I thought he would go to Green Bay because Green Bay is a team that really needs something like that. It doesn't work out. He goes to Chicago. The one that is probably the biggest head scratcher for me, and I love the Roquan Smith move, by the way, as well. I think I do think that maybe Baltimore gave up a little bit more than they should have, a 2nd and a 5th and a player. But, Roquan Smith's a very, very good linebacker, and they've needed a little bit of linebacker help. But the Kadarius Toney trade.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that one.
That one is – I don't know. What's your feeling on that? Because he was supposed to be one of these playmakers going forward for the Giants, and very quickly here he's shipped out to Kansas City, and he's probably loving it. You get to play with Mahomes eventually.
Yeah, that one happened last week. And
yeah, it was last week.
And we haven't talked about it at all. The Chiefs need playmakers, and the Giants are doing well without Kadarius Toney. They drafted Wendell Robinson,
Mhm.
and he's doing well for them. They use Darius Slayton and David Stills. A lot of, you know, not big name wide receivers, but they're getting it done. And there was talks about trading Kadarius Toney all offseason, honestly. And he was okay last season for the Giants, but when you have a new regime, they make changes. Like obviously we saw with the Raiders, Alex Leatherwood drafted in the first round and then cut before training camp or during training camp before the season started. Um, I think it's a good move for the Chiefs and for the Giants. Just better to move on when a player's not going to fit your scheme. It's best to just move on, and maybe Andy Reid gets the best out of him. But as far as the trades made on Tuesday, I was a little shocked by the TJ Hawkinson trade, and they get a lot of value for him. But I never like trading in your own division. So the Lions are gonna see TJ Hawkinson later this season when they play the Vikings. And I think it's a great move for the Vikings. They acquire a tight end, which they sorely need. Irv Smith Jr. has been just okay for them. And honestly, like they don't even use him. I mean, he's been hurt, so he'll be out for the foreseeable future. But TJ Hawkinson is one of the best tight ends of football. And the Lions, they're 1-6, a little disappointing again this season. I just think it's weird to trade in your own division, but as far as the Vikings, yeah, I think that's a huge move. They already have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. They acquired Jalen Rager before the season started. KJ Osborne has been a good receiver for them. And the only thing that was missing was tight end play, and now they have that. So I think that makes them a better team. I'm with you, Alon. I didn't really get the Chase Claypool trade. I understand it to give Justin Fields a big wide receiver for the
Mhm.
future, so that's their guy. And honestly, I didn't like him in Pittsburgh. I did like him initially his rookie year, but he rubbed me the wrong way last season when he was celebrating before a fourth down and when the clock was running in Minnesota. So, and the Bears are going to have to throw the football in order to see the best out of Chase Claypool. So maybe that makes them more of a passing team. I thought it would have made more sense for him to go to the Packers because Aaron Rodgers needs a wide receiver desperately, but they don't get one at all. And we'll talk about that a little later. The biggest one I think is Bradley Chubb getting traded to the Dolphins. That was the one thing that was missing from their team. They have a great offense. They have a good secondary, but the only thing they lack is pass rush. They have a good young player in Jalen Phillips and a veteran in Melvin Ingram, but now they have Bradley Chubb who has 5.5 sacks. And you may be asking, like, why would the Broncos, after getting that win over the Jaguars, trade one of their best defensive players? And the only reason I could come up with is because they get a first round pick back. So
That's
next
exactly why.
season, they're 3-5. They're
Yeah.
not doing great. They beat the Jaguars, but I don't think I think it was in their best interest to acquire Bradley Chubb now, or to trade away Bradley Chubb now, so they could get a first round pick next season, and they'll be all right defensively. He's going to be a big piece that they lose, but at the same time, I think that they'll be okay. But then again, they weren't doing great to begin with. I think Bradley Chubb going to the Dolphins is a huge move. It helps their defense, so that's the one that really stood out to me the most.
They have Denver. When I say they haven't had trouble finding good defensive players in the draft. They haven't. They have also not had trouble going to other teams' practice squads or some of their, I say, second string players and bringing them in and playing well. So I think Denver is going to be fine in the future. If you're a Broncos fan, though, you gotta hate that. I mean, Bradley Chubb is a marquee pass rusher, and now he's going to be in Miami. Good for Miami. That's the one piece that they have Phillips, like you said, and they have an aging Ingram. But it's really good for them now that they have a young stud like Bradley Chubb, or in his prime, really is what Bradley Chubb is. So that's just a great move. And for Denver on the other side, I'm not saying that they're not giving up on the season because they still have Russell Wilson, even though he is not playing very well and that offense is just very, very clunky and out of order. But they do get a first round pick. And a first round pick, like, you know what you are already with Bradley Chubb on your team right now. So that's one player. It is a defensive end or rush linebacker. So it's a little it can be tough. That there's a lot of value at that position, but a first round pick can make you a lot better in a lot of different ways than maybe a known commodity that you already have and you're already under 500. So I think that's a really good trade both ways, and I think Denver gets something out of it. I really think Miami gets a boost right now. I kind of want to go back to that T.J. Hawkinson deal. Not that I think that's going to like shake up the entire landscape of the NFC North or anything like that. It does help Minnesota a lot, but when you were saying very weird to trade a player in your own division to a player on your team to a team in your own division, and it's so often that we see that teams are they could get better by trading within their own division, but they won't because they want to hurt their enemy more or hurt their rivals more. And I wonder if something like this is just kind of going to happen more often, especially after we saw all these kinds of trades. I don't particularly think it will, but it's fascinating. Not that Detroit and Minnesota are like the biggest rivalry in my mind, but they're division foes. So I wonder if we'll see some of these cross interdivision trades kind of happen more often. It's fascinating to me because so many times teams are willing to not get better through a trade if that trade involves another team in their division.
I think we see it a lot on draft day. I've noticed a lot of teams like the Eagles and Cowboys will do a deal. I remember this past year, the Lions acquired Jameson Williams because they did a deal with the Minnesota Vikings. So they have done deals before. It's just weird to me to acquire a great player. So the
In
Vikings
season
now
too.
in season,
Yeah.
the Lions. I mean, like they're 1-6, obviously, so they don't think they really have a chance. But they looks like they need a lot of help. So they acquire a ton of draft picks, and the Vikings get T.J. Hawkinson. So honestly, it is beneficial for both teams, but at the same time, I think it's just weird to trade in your own division. But maybe that will be a thing of the past. As far as Bradley Chubb, yeah, I think the first round pick thing you can't turn that down. It sounds like even though they're 3-5, I mean, even though they're 3-5, 3-5 is not where they wanted to be. They're below expectations. They're below 500. I think that they if they were going to lose that game against the Jaguars, they probably were going to sell a lot more. It sounds like Jerry Jeudy was on the table for a team. It sounds like the Giants actually were looking to get him. Brian Dable knows him from Alabama, and it sounds like the compensation was just not what they were looking for. The Giants were close to sending him for a second round pick. The Packers were in also on Jerry Jeudy, and they just didn't want to deal a second round pick too. So, or they wanted a second round pick plus another like mid round pick. So yeah, I mean, the Bradley Chubb one, I think, is something that Denver just couldn't pass up on. A first round pick where they say goodbye to a great defensive player, but at the same time, they get something they need. They need a first round pick. They spent a ton to get Russell Wilson a season ago, and they still have glaring needs. So I think that helps one. One that was a shocker to me was Calvin Ridley going to the Jaguars. That one I totally didn't even like think about. There was rumors of Calvin Ridley getting traded to the Eagles before the whole gambling thing came out. He suspended the full season, so he will not be playing for the Jaguars this season, but he will be playing for them next season. The whole funny thing about him betting on the game a year ago between the Falcons and the Jaguars is just a funny thing. But I think it's a good target for Trevor Lawrence in the future. They asked, Doug Peterson why they wanted to do this deal now, and he was available, and why not do it now when you know that you're not going to lose him? You're obviously not going to lose him to injury because he's suspended the rest of the season. You don't have to battle out other teams in the offseason. So I think that was a pretty good move as well.
I like that move, and you mentioned good target for Lawrence in the future. And one really good thing about it too is they're roughly the same age, or they're right in that same age range. I mean, they played in college together, not on the same school, obviously,
Right.
but that's great if they can develop something, even though it's going to be a while before they are actually able to see the fruition of it. But that's a good move for Jacksonville and Atlanta. I mean, I know they get conditional picks out of it. I think they get a fifth and a fourth. I got it right here, actually. Yeah, 2023 round number 5 conditional and a 2024 round 4 conditional. So they're able to get a few assets back. I don't think Calvin Ridley gets traded without that gambling suspension even happening to begin with. Or if he did, it would be maybe because he had kind of worn out his usefulness. But Calvin Ridley's a very talented player, and he can be very productive. I just don't think Atlanta's in a position right now to really utilize a player like Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, and I thought that it sounded like the Eagles were going to trade for him if he was not going to be suspended the entire season. It sounded like I think the story was that the deal was going to get done, and then Howie Roseman called um, Scott Fitterer, no, whoever the GM is in Atlanta right now, and basically said, "What's going on with the deal?" And they said, "Well, you're not going to want him now." And that deal was put to bed. And in good faith, they couldn't, execute that deal. But yeah, I think that it's a good move for the future. And yeah, so overall, Alon, which team got better? And I honestly, I think it's probably the Miami Dolphins, since they're above 500 right now. They're 5-3. They get better on the defensive side of the ball with having a great pass rusher. They trade away Chase Edmonds, but he wasn't really being utilized that much in Miami to begin with. They get Jeff Wilson Jr. from the 49ers, and now they have Raheem Mostert plus Jeff Wilson Jr., two former 49ers now teaming up with Mike McDaniel. So, in my opinion, the team that got the better on trade deadline was the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I think the Miami Dolphins made the big splashy move. I mean, what's interesting is that San Francisco's move for McCaffrey would have been like the move of all moves, and it still is. I mean, it's still a massive move. But the fact that Miami's able to get Bradley Chubb, a great defensive end, right before the trade deadline, that's huge. I don't know. Out of the last, the close to the deadline moves, I definitely think Miami had the best results. But I still like what San Francisco, and obviously a little bit spoiled, get to see what Christian McCaffrey can now do for the Niners. I really like what San Francisco was able to do getting Christian McCaffrey. But out of these trade deadline deals, definitely you can't go wrong with Bradley Chubb. And it's also pretty cool that they're able to get a 5th-round pick too with him. Like, I know it's just a 5th rounder, but hey, it's a 5th rounder. It could turn into a Pro Bowler. You never know.
No, you never know.
And real quick, Derek.
Yeah.
Also, the Naheem Hines trade.
I
think
Bills.
that one's to the Bills. I think that one's really a good one to look at too, because Zach Moss goes over to Indy and they get a 6th-round pick, but I think Naheem Hines does have something that maybe he hasn't been able to show in Indy before, and it might be really good for the Bills to have a back like Naheem Hines, especially as the season intensifies towards the end of the season when they maybe do need to run the ball a little bit more. Running back depth's always a good thing.
That's the thing, though. I don't see Naheem Hines as a running back. I see him as a pass-catching running back out of the backfield. I mean, yes, he's a running back, but he's going to catch balls for them. I see them when it starts to snow a little bit, that they run with Josh Allen first, and then Devin Singletary, then James Cook, and then Naheem Hines. All three of their running backs can catch passes. I still got to see them be consistent in running the football, but I do think it's a good move. I think they like the idea of having kind of like the New England Patriots thing of having running backs that can catch, and they're all able to do it. So I think that makes their offense that much versatile. And yeah, Zach Moss wasn't really getting it done in Buffalo. He goes to Indy, and Indy's, we'll see what's going on with them. But I think that was a good move as well. I'm with you, Alon. I don't think that any of the moves made on trade deadline will have a bigger impact as Christian McCaffrey going to the Niners. And we saw it this past week, and we'll go more in detail later about the game. But throwing a touchdown, catching a touchdown, rushing for a touchdown, he's one of the best running backs in football. We already knew that, for however long he was in Carolina. He had the 1,000 season where he, rushed for 1,000 yards, caught for 1,000 yards. He is going to have, obviously, Robert Quinn could have a huge sack in a playoff game, just like Von Miller did a year ago with the Rams. Roquan Smith could make a huge impact lining up next to Patrick Queen in the Baltimore Ravens defense. But as far as taking a team from where they were to making them that much better on offense, I think the Christian McCaffrey deal blows any other deal that's been done so far during the season.
I mean, especially after the performance he put on just a few days ago, it was incredible. I mean, it was one of the best individual performances I've seen in a long time in football, and especially a long time in football out of a running back. Now, like Derrick Henry tears up the Texans for over 200 yards, right? Well, Texans have a horrible rushing defense, and it's Derrick Henry. But and he's doing what he gets.
Sorry, but just like how many
Yeah.
games in a row has he done this against the Texans? They don't think eventually they got to stop this guy, and the fact that
I
he's
don't
gone
know.
for 200 yards every time,
Yeah,
Jesus.
I mean it's amazing, and the Texans just don't know how to stop it. But when I see a player like Christian McCaffrey, get the running touchdown, a receiving, and a passing, the first thing as a Raiders backer, the first thing that came to my mind was, man, Darren McFadden was about 10 years too early to the NFL. If he was around right now, he could be catching a ball, passing a ball, and running one in. But
yeah,
no, McCaffrey. I think you and I were both on the same page that he would help San Francisco. He would help the Niners a lot if he got there, but that maybe wasn't the optimal move for him or for a team. But man, watching what Shanahan's been able to do with him, just through 2 weeks, it's pretty darn good. And I think McCaffrey, the only real question on him is just, does his health hold up, and what's kind of the snap count, the pitch count on him. But man, he's so versatile. And I will say this: I think Garoppolo gets more comfortable with an outlet like that. And having a safety valve like McCaffrey, who is always going to pick you up at least a few yards, is going to make him more comfortable throwing anywhere else on the field. So I really like that. It is the best move. Bradley Chubb's a close second. And real quick about Roquan Smith playing next to Queen, and that might be the best linebacking tandem that we've had in a while in the league. I mean,
no, it could be
other than Seattle, they had Wagner and
KJ Wright.
KJ Wright, or really have to go back. Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis. So I mean, we haven't seen a really good linebacking tandem in a while. This could be a good one in Baltimore.
No, I agree, and I think that Christian McCaffrey takes the Niners' offense to a whole new level. It makes Jimmy Garoppolo that much more comfortable, and it opens things up for George Kittle. So it elevates them from being maybe the second best team in the NFC, but we have a long time to discuss that. As far as teams that didn't make moves, I was shocked that the Rams didn't do anything. And it's not like they didn't do anything without trying. So the rumors were that a team offered the Carolina Panthers 2 first-round picks, and they said no, which we all thought was ridiculous. But it turns out to be true. And I read Albert Breer's piece on Saturday, and everyone picked it up later on Tuesday. I read that he outlines that the Rams' only first-round picks were in 2024 and 2025, and then he writes, and the Rams made a substantial offer to the Panthers. To me, that hinted at the fact that the Rams offered those 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns, and that turned out to be the case. And in the end, the Carolina Panthers said no. Those picks are just 2 down the line, and honestly, they want to hang on to Brian Burns. So Les Snead, fuck them picks and all that stuff, it kind of bit him in the ass because, to be honest, everything that they have to offer is for the future. They don't have any. I mean, they have second-round picks and they have, picks for next season, but they don't have any first-round picks, and they need those to honestly make their offensive line a hell of a lot better than it is, because that's why their team is not playing well right now. They have one of the lowest scoring offenses in all of football. It's nowhere near what it was a season ago, and that's honestly maybe the best thing for them. There were rumors of Brian Burns. There was rumors about Kareem Hunt. I'm still surprised they didn't go for Kareem Hunt, but I guess they want to make amends with Cam Akers, who I guess is going to return to them, but there's still some hesitancy. He feels like he was scorned by the team, so they're going to stay pat. They probably will still go after Odell Beckham, but you still got to think that Odell wants to go to a team that's going to win the Super Bowl. So, but he also wants to sign a long-term deal, so I can't see the Buffalo Bills signing him to a long-term deal, or whoever else is in the mix, the Green Bay Packers. I still think he goes back to the Rams, but it was just interesting to me that the whole league was kind of copycatting the Rams a season ago with all the fuck them pick stuff, and you saw the Miami Dolphins be aggressive this offseason, all the quarterback movement. And in the end, the Rams win the Super Bowl, but their past deals kind of caught up with them because no one wanted to do a deal with them at the trade deadline. They didn't end up getting a pass rusher. They didn't end up getting a running back to help them. So now they got to roll with what they have, and they still have a pretty good team on paper, but 3-4, this NFC is still wide open. Another team that I was kind of surprised to make a move was the Green Bay Packers. And I thought Brandon Cooks was the easiest move to make. Now he probably would have cost you a second round pick, and you got to eat his salary next season for 18 million, and a lot of teams were hesitant to pick that up. It sounds like the Cowboys were close to dealing him, but they couldn't get past the fact that he was going to be due 18 million next season, and in the end, he didn't get traded.
Yeah.
He would have been the most traded player in NFL history if that would have been the case. But now it sounds like he's pissed that he wasn't traded, and he's staying away from the team. They have a game tomorrow, and it sounds like he's not going to play, so he could be released in the next couple weeks here. But yeah, I was surprised that the Rams and the Packers and even the Buccaneers, honestly, didn't make any deals to get better with how disappointing they've been so far.
I think the Buccaneers kind of know that most of their problems lie within the offensive line aspect of their team. And it is hard to trade for marquee offensive linemen or good offensive linemen who are going to improve your team halfway through the season, because teams, even if they're really bad, I mean, they'd have to be horrendous to give up someone who's going to potentially the replacement's going to come in and the quarterback's going to get killed. So that's always tough. But the Rams was surprising. I like the whole because they tried to go after Brian Burns. The thing I don't get with Carolina, it's like I don't really know what direction that team's going in. They're in full rebuild mode. Brian Burns has been in the league now. He was in college in 2018, his last year at FSU, so he's been in the league for about 3 years. Good player, has over 30 sacks in his career, right around 30 sacks. But I mean, you get 2 first-round picks. I know they're a little down the line. You got to have a little patience to let them, develop and everything, or to get to that point where you can actually make that pick. But I don't understand that. I think 2 first-round picks that are within 3 years of you picking them, you should take that when you're in a position like Carolina. I am a little bit surprised that Cooks didn't get traded. And it was funny when you were talking about that. I said, "Man, is he like the most traded player of all time?" And I guess he would have been. So he would have been like I can't even remember that pitcher the A's had about 4 or 5 years ago. I think it was a Dominican guy, but he had been on like 14 different teams, 13 different big league teams in his career.
Oh, really?
One of the years they went to the playoffs. But anyway, the other thing is Kareem Hunt. I see Kareem Hunt in Cleveland, and I'm just like, man, this is not your show. This is Chubb's show. Like, this is Kareem Hunt. You're a great back. The fact that the Rams, or maybe another team that needed a running back that I'm not thinking of, but the fact that the Rams, who definitely do need running back help, weren't able to go out and get him does really show that this whole, like you said, F them picks thing, like, it's tough to trade for something when even if you have good assets, you have good first round picks, but they're not next year. A lot of teams don't even want to deal with that because they have pressure on themselves. You can't go into the owner or the fan base the next day and go, "Hey, look, we got a bunch of first-round picks. That's great. When are they?" "Oh, 3 or 4 years down the line." "Oh, okay." Like, that's just not the way the sport works. The sport works in a way where it's a few good players and a few big plays here or there, and all of a sudden you can be a really good team. You can go from worst to first.
Right.
And the NFL's kind of built that way. But the Rams are going to roll with what they have. On paper, like you said, they're very, very good. They cannot score. They can't score. They can't score at all. And against the Niners the other day, watching them, I'm like, I do think the Niners are one of the top 5 teams for sure in the NFC, and very close with McCaffrey now probably being number 2.
I think so.
I mean, I know the Eagles are damn good right now, but I would really like to see what a high leverage game between those 2 teams would look like. I think San Francisco would probably find a way to come on top. But yeah, I mean, we've seen all kinds of movement and everything. The teams that didn't make the moves, the Rams, they're kind of stuck with what they have because of what they've done in the past. Yeah. Green Bay, you have Aaron Rodgers, man. And I know it's the simplest talking point, but they've had him for such a long time now. They have a 1 Super Bowl show for it. And it's like they just hate that guy over there. And he semi hates them, but is also okay with it somehow. I don't get it. It's like the word. It's like you live to.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah,
they paid him, so I think that things are fine now. But he also was, he's not happy. I mean, he's pissy with, the way
there's no one to throw to.
Yeah, and the weirdest thing was the Sunday night game against the Bills. Yeah, they were like, 3 weeks too late. Like
Yeah.
they figured out like we can't throw on this team, so let's run on this team when we're down 17 points. But you're down 17 points. I didn't get that at all. You could have run the ball when you had the lead against the Giants. You could have run the ball against the Jets. You could have run the ball against the Commanders. I don't get that. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers must be kicking himself for. I mean, maybe not, but he's probably pissed that him getting the money led to Devontae Adams not being there, or Devontae Adams just wanted to leave. But yeah, he's got no confidence in anybody to throw to right now.
Claypool would have been such an easy get for them because he doesn't require. You get a very highish end talent in Claypool, who's still very young with a big physical body, and you don't really have to give up a whole ton of picks to get him. You can give up a second rounder and take his salary, and there you go.
I think it sounds like they were just screwed, with the fact that the Bears wanted him too, and the perception was that the Bears are a worse team than the Packers. So the Steelers went with the Bears because they'll have the better pick. That's just something that's out of their control. And honestly, I don't know if Claypool would have worked out in Green Bay. I think that Claypool's a great player. Not a great player, actually. He's just very young, and I think Aaron Rodgers needs to play with a veteran right now.
He could be Kelvin Benjamin part 2. Big body receiver who kind of has a.
He's got more speed though than
he's got more
speed than Kelvin Benjamin.
Yeah, he does.
But I thought Brandon Cooks would have been perfect. It's just tough to eat his salary next season, but who knows? He may be available because he's upset with the way things went down. But Kareem Hunt was the biggest head scratcher to me. I don't understand. I guess they're 3-5. They had that impressive win over the Bengals on Monday Night Football, but the offense runs through Nick Chubb. And I guess he's a good change of pace, but they also have to Ernest Johnson. And the Rams needed help, and it sounded like he could go for a 4th-round pick, but who knows how negotiations went. They may have asked for more in the end. I was surprised because Kareem Hunt's probably going to go to a new team next offseason. He's a free agent. He'll probably be the starting running back for some team next season. I was just surprised by that you couldn't get a draft pick for him now. So in the end, it was a crazy trade deadline. A lot of big names, a lot of names that didn't get dealt, and there's still more to come. We'll see what happens with Brandon Cooks. He may cause a stink, and the Texans are forced to release him. Odell Beckham Jr. is still going to be on his free agency tour, and he'll sign with the team eventually. So still things to look out for. And by the way, an update. You were right, Alon. Christian Javier did not even pitch in the 7th. So Dusty Baker yanked him, and that was the end of that. So the Phillies are still being no-hit currently, but no history made tonight.
No, none. But Brad Hand gets to be part of a no-hitter, which he probably hasn't been before. So that's a little history. But I mean, crazy trade deadline, and haven't seen one like this in the NFL that I can remember. Haven't seen the multitude of moves with big, some smaller names, but with some big names as well. So very, very entertaining to watch. And if you're an NFL fan, maybe some of the games haven't been too great lately, especially some of the ones during prime time. Mostly Thursday night, looking at you Thursday. But at least we had a very exciting trade deadline, and hopefully the quality of play excels with the trades that were just made.
Definitely. Let's talk about some of the games that happened this past week at Week 8. And I never usually say this, but let's start with the Niners because there's a lot to dissect with the Raider game, and the Raider game was just awful. But let's talk about the Niner game real quick. We talked about it. Christian McCaffrey doing something that hasn't been done since 2005, and I think you and I remember this. LaDainian Tomlinson throwing a touchdown, catching a touchdown, rushing for a touchdown against the Raiders. It's only happened a few times in NFL history, but just an amazing performance by Christian McCaffrey. It started with the Rams playing well. Their offensive line held up in the first half. Matthew Stafford was finally finding Allen Robinson. There was no running game to speak of, though. I don't know what's going on. The Cam Akers thing, we'll see if he returns the Rams, but even Darrell Henderson not being played. They went with, what's his first name? Rivers for the Rams. I want to say like Ricky Rivers, but I don't think that's the right name.
You mean Ronnie Rivers.
Ronnie Rivers, yeah.
Yeah.
And him wearing Todd Gurley's own number, and they have no run game whatsoever. So a lot of it was just passing. and they did a pretty good job. A lot of quick passes after Matthew Stafford got sacked 7 times in the early meeting, and a few bounces here or there, and maybe it was a different ball game. McCaffrey did fumble, and it landed right into the arms of Ray McLeod. Jalen Ramsey had a couple of chances at an interception, and in the end, the difference was Christian McCaffrey. Honestly, that game flipped in the second half because Christian McCaffrey went to the Niners and not the Rams, and he was a difference maker. And then the 49er defense couldn't get any pressure in the first half, and they started blitzing. Fred Warner came on a blitz. Nick Bosa then sacked Matthew Stafford in the second half. It also kind of felt, and even the Niners said this in the post game, it kind of felt like the Rams conceded. Like once they were down 31-14, they were, facing third and longs, and probably the game was out of reach at that point, but then just running the football on draws. Honestly, I thought they were looking at the game like, shit, we're not that good. Let's go on the trade deadline and make some moves, and nothing happened. So, and also maybe they just look at themselves in the mirror and go, we are not as good as the 49ers, which makes you think that they are damn lucky that they won that NFC Championship game, because if they were staring 9 straight losses in a row to the Niners, including the NFC Championship game, and they acquired all that talent and got Matthew Stafford, I don't know what the future would have hold for Sean McVay and everybody. But they get that lone championship, so they're kind of paying for it now. And that's a trade you make with the devil every day. But they get Allen Robinson in the offseason, they get Bobby Wagner, and it's just not helping them out. I mean, Bobby Wagner's helped them out in the run game a little bit, but Christian McCaffrey was, catching passes on him. And honestly, the addition of Christian McCaffrey opens things up for the offense. It was a little late, but Jimmy Garoppolo finds George Kittle wide open in the end zone to make it 31-14. So the difference in the game in the second half was the Niners having Christian McCaffrey and the Rams not having Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey came out to play, and the Rams were ahead in that game. I mean, at halftime, it was 14-10 Los Angeles. So, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, the Niners just took the game from the start and ran away from it. I mean, it was back and forth there for a while, and then all of a sudden, second half, Christian McCaffrey has the performance of his life for sure up until now. But
Yeah.
on the other side of it too, defensively, the Niners just have a way about they're a very physical team. I mean, they beat you
Yes.
up and they play hard every down. Bosa's sack, I mean, he had a couple of sacks, and the way he just gets after the quarterback is incredible. But and I know the Rams haven't been able to score, but they still have Matthew Stafford, who's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's their quarterback. They just won the Super Bowl last year. They get shut out in the second half. The Niners can do that to teams. They can absolutely take whatever you want to do away from you and make you just look silly and beat you up mentally like that. So that's what happened to the Rams. McCaffrey, I think I'm not saying we're going to see him get 3 touchdowns 3 different ways every week or maybe ever again. You never know. But I think they're just scratching the surface on what they can really do with this guy. I mean, I can see him being the way that Debo, this is the way I look at it. The way that Debo was that X factor for them last year, they still got Debo and he's playing more of a receiver role. But that now they really have an X factor here, another one in Christian McCaffrey. So it takes stress off of Debo. You don't have to run him on as many gadget plays. You can use McCaffrey more for that stuff. So they were dynamic last year with a weapon that no one in the NFL could really contend with, and they got another one right now. So I mean, the Niners are damn good.
No, they are, and I think you can use Debo still in that way. It's just a more of a unpredictability of, are we giving it to Christian McCaffrey on this play? Are we giving it to Debo Samuel? They'll line them both up in the backfield, and yeah, I mean they're going to use McCaffrey as a wide receiver. It's going to make this offense that more dynamic. It still lives and dies with Jimmy Garoppolo of how far he could take this team, but Christian McCaffrey makes them that much better, and you just saw it on Sunday. And the Rams, they're only 3-4, and they'll play a weird game this Sunday with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's a rematch of the divisional playoff game a year ago, and both teams are below 500, but I still think it's going to be a pretty exciting game. Just both offenses are stuck in the mud. It's crazy that the Packers, Rams, and Buccaneers are not performing like they did a season ago. And along with the Niners, they were probably the 4 best teams coming into the NFC this season. But yeah, a tale of two halves. The Niners just kicked the Rams' ass in the second half, and it's been dominance. 8 straight wins the regular season. It's just crazy. It kind of reminds me of back in the day when Mike Shanahan kept beating the Raiders,
Oh yeah.
John Gruden's Raiders. They won, I think, like 7 in a row at one point, and it was just like a mental and physical intimidation. And I think that's what the Rams have right now with the Niners. Or sorry, what the Niners have with the Rams. That they just, they don't have the marquee players like they do, with the exception of Christian McCaffrey. They got Stafford, they got Cooper Kupp, they got Aaron Donald, they got Jalen Ramsey, but it's something mentally every time they play the Niners. Like, let's just hope we don't fuck this up. And in the end, something happens, and then the Niners just know their weaknesses, and it's happened 7 or 8 straight times in the regular season.
And you bring that up, it's a combination of mental and physical, and I definitely do think there definitely is a mental side of it. And most people would say, well, in the NFL, everybody's physical, they're all prime athletes, they're all big guys, all this stuff. But the Niners beat the crap out of them when they play. There's no other way of saying it. Like, Hufanga laying the wood. Like, even when on a routine tackle, he's coming up and making like a hard stick. Fred Warner is like blowing guys up, or when he's in the hole, like, it's not easy. There's no easy yards. There's arms. There's bodies everywhere. They're hitting you. They're putting a hat on you. Like, I don't think they just have a mental advantage right now over the Rams. I mean, I know the Rams were able to win the Super Bowl last year, getting through the Niners, but the Niners beat them up. And until the Rams can figure out either how to out-finesse them, so outflank them, use speed, and get away from them, they're going to have to go through them. And the Rams just haven't been able to figure that out in the regular season for a long time.
All right. Let's talk about the Raiders. So we came into the game on Sunday thinking that this is a game they should win. With the Saints being 2-5, a little disappointing. This game would have been good on paper, before the season started, because I thought the Saints are really good coming into the season. But they've had their defensive woes and their quarterback situation. Andy Dalton threw 2 pick sixes against the Arizona Cardinals. And you don't think they're going to put up that much of a fight. There's rumors of Alvin Kamara being traded. And then we get to Sunday, and they still have 10 days to prepare for this game. The Raiders are coming off a big win against the Houston Texans, and this is a game that you think the Raiders should win. And I also forgot, in thinking about this game, that it's a revenge game for Dennis Allen, who coached the Raiders for, God, what was it, 2.5 seasons?
And you texted me that. You said, I guess Dennis Allen gets his revenge. And I went, oh, yeah, he does, I guess.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then it was a total shellacking. Alvin Kamara shows why the Saints should never trade away him. He goes for 3 touchdowns. He has his own Christian McCaffrey game, and there's people forget about him, but he could be, when he's healthy, he could be just as good as Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion, if not better. And he dominated the Raiders, and Andy Dalton dominated the Raiders. Their defense dominated the Raiders. Dennis Allen got his revenge. One catch by Devontae Adams. He was targeted 5 times, just 1 catch for 3 yards. Josh Jacobs been playing fantastic, but when you're down by 24 points, the running game's not going to help you. And the whole offense couldn't do anything. They couldn't block. They couldn't get past the 50-yard line until 2 minutes left in the game. It was just an utter beatdown. I remember back in the day, when the Raiders were pretty bad, they would get shit out routinely, like in 2006, where they had just one of the worst offenses you've ever seen in football. I never thought I would see this Raider team this season with the offense that they were supposed to have get shut out. It's just a disappointment. It's a really bad disappointment. They're 2-5. I still think they got winnable games. You question if they're going to make the playoffs. Every time I hear that Mark Davis is having a closed-door meeting with Josh McDaniels, I'm like, what is he going to say? Like, I know he's doing a lot of good things for the organization going forward, but as far as, like, football intellect, when he has a closed-door meeting, like, I'm sorry, you're not your dad, Al. Like, or you're not your dad, Mark. Like, you're not Al. Like, I don't know what you're going to tell Josh McDaniels to do better. Now, I did like the fact that he came out and said that Josh McDaniels is our coach and we're not changing that. Like, everybody that expects that Josh McDaniels is going to be fired for Sean Payton, that's not happening. it just sucks. I do think that this team will be eventually good because I do think Josh McDaniels is a good coach, but with the expectations they had, it's just ridiculous that they had to go through a feeling out period. Like, and maybe it's on Derek Carr. Like, every time he gets a new coach, he doesn't play well, and then he plays well. I just think there should be, like, they made this move to get Josh McDaniels and to get Devontae Adams and to get Chandler Jones to build upon being a playoff team a season ago, and they look nothing like that.
I think I think part of it for sure is on Derek Carr. And I like Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr is a very good quarterback and at times and has been a good quarterback at times. Like last year, I think he was a great leader and a pretty good quarterback. But you're right about the whole thing when he gets new head coaches and shoot, he's had a lot of them now, and new play callers and all that kind of stuff. But he does have a long adapting period, and it's probably not too fun to go from a very complex offense with all the Gruden style verbiage to all of a sudden another very heady offense to McDaniels, but he wants to run his way. It's a little bit different. So yeah, it's hard, but you would expect by now where Derek would have a very good grasp of things, and they still don't look comfortable. They don't get in and out of the huddle very quickly. It seems like there's a lot of not confusion, but tentativeness, not just on his part, but the receivers as well. Like not instinctively knowing what they're supposed to do, but thinking about it while they're doing it. So you see a lot of that show up during Raider games. But as far as Mark Davis meeting with McDaniels, like, yeah, what's he going to tell him? He probably told him, "Look, I'm not firing you. I don't care what everybody else is saying outside of the building. I hired you here for a reason. No one knows the specifics of his contract, so we don't know how long he is signed for. We don't know if it's 1 year or 10 years. So we have no idea."
I would assume he didn't sign for 1 year, but yeah,
I would. Yeah, I would.
hear you.
Yeah. So that would be weird.
Or,
But,
or 10 years.
Or 10 year. Yeah. So
Giving him the John Gruden treatment.
the John Gruden treatment. So, but you know, I think I agree with you. I think this team will be good. I think they will be very potent offensively. They have the weapons for it, at least at the skill positions.
But when?
I think we will see it this season. We've seen flashes of it this season. What needs to happen is the consistency.
Yes.
I think the biggest problem with this team right now are there are two big problems. It's kind of interesting. The Niners you could say their biggest problem is their quarterback play with Jimmy Garoppolo, but he gets done enough for them. Right now, the biggest problem for the Raiders offensively is their quarterback play. Maybe their offensive line. One or the other, or put them all together. Those two together, right? Offensive line, quarterback play has just been subpar and inconsistent. The other biggest problem is you cannot have Max Crosby and 10 other guys trying to play deep. Max Crosby's playing his ass off. And I'm not saying there aren't other players who aren't either. But they don't generate pass rush. Max Crosby does. Chandler Jones looks a shell of himself. It's not working out. He didn't have a great season last year. His numbers were inflated. He had quite a few sacks in one game. I want to say 5 of them. So, yeah, I mean, I think this team will be good. I think Josh McDaniels has the potential to be a very good head coach. It's just about everything kind of gelling, and they're still not gelled yet. That being said, if they were going to lose one of these games over on the East Coast or Southeast between New Orleans and Jacksonville, this would probably be the one that they would have lost, even though New Orleans is worse than Jacksonville, maybe some would say. I think New Orleans is more dangerous than Jacksonville, but Jacksonville has been a little flashier at times. But this probably would be the one they would have lost because it's harder to play at the Superdome than it is to play, in Jacksonville. So they got a little work cut out for them. Their season's not over, but 2 more losses and you could probably put a fork in the playoffs if you're a Raider fan, and that's fine. You weren't going to win a Super Bowl this year if you're a Raider fan. You probably shouldn't have been thinking that. But what you're expecting is to see a consistent offense. Statistically, they're ranked in the top 5, I think, still, even after Sunday's putrid performance in terms of points per game. Maybe they're number 6 now, but they were number 3 heading into that game. So I think Raider fans just want consistency. Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of glaring issues, but their glaring issues aren't unfixable. They're just more of new regime. It's very hard to switch regimes and expect instant success. Doesn't always happen.
It doesn't, but at the same time, when you make the moves for Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones, and you're coming in with a guy that has won Super Bowls with Bill Belichick and Dave Ziegler, who's been in the front office with New England, you're selling something that is just not panning out the way you want it to be. And back to the game itself, like I think the biggest problem that Josh McDaniels has is just his offense is not very creative right now. Like
No.
it's just based on a running game of Josh Jacobs, and when that doesn't get going, like what are you going to do? The passing game has not been explosive whatsoever. The biggest thing that I look at on the stat sheet from Sunday's game is that Hunter Renfrow has a catch for 6 yards and Devontae Adams has a catch for 3 yards. You had 9 yards from both of those guys, and that's supposed to be your offense. And Darren Waller, it is what it is with his injuries. But the fact that those guys get 2 catches for a total of 9 yards, like and Hunter Renfrow has not been the same guy as a season ago. He's not Cooper Cup, Junior. I don't know what it is. It's just teams are catching on a little bit with him, with the slot corners defending, playing nickel, but there isn't really a lot of creativity with the offense right now. And maybe there needs to be a feeling out process for Josh McDaniels as well. But you like to see this team be explosive eventually, and that's what it looks like on paper, but it has not lived up to the hype whatsoever. It's been a disappointment, and hopefully they get their shit together against Jacksonville and these other teams they have on the schedule coming up. But yeah, man, I was expecting a lot more. I think a lot of Raider fans were expecting a lot more. It is what it is. There's been a lot of disappointment this NFL season. You thought that the Colts were going to be great with Matt Ryan, obviously Russell Wilson with the Broncos. And, a lot of teams aren't scoring very well right now. We just talked about the Rams, Packers, Buccaneers, but you expect it with a younger team and a team that was learning, to grow. And I think Josh McDaniels just has to figure out how to give the ball to his playmakers right now. He's done this before. He had Randy Moss in New England. He had, Julian Edelman in New England, and that should be your offense. Randy Moss, Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Hunter Renfrow is Julian Edelman. Gronk should be Darren Waller. And obviously, those guys aren't those Hall of Fame players. We'll see about Julian Edelman. But it should be the same recipe, is all I'm saying.
No, it should be. And I agree. I love that point that as a coach, Josh McDaniels, one of the great things of Kyle Shanahan, one of the greatest things that he does, he gets the ball into his playmakers' hands. He always figures out a way. Sean McVay, except for this season, has always been one of those guys too. I mean, so creative. Andy Reid, they figure out a way to get the ball into the playmakers' hands. So, I mean, Josh McDaniels, he has done it before, and he needs to do it again. And it is a feeling out process still, although it has been, darn near 9 weeks now. I do think schematically one thing that has hurt Hunter Renfrow, because the last 2 years, I mean, he was nearly unguardable. I mean, it was very hard to stop him. And I know Waller was on the field a good amount of those games, except for towards the tail end of last season. But they line up in 21 personnel like crazy. I don't have a problem with that. I don't mind 2 running backs, a tight end, and then a couple of wide receivers or whatever, especially when you got Josh Jacobs and you're running the ball well and all those kinds of things. But when you run those formations, generally your wide receivers are gonna be Mac Hollins because he's a bigger body, as well as Devontae Adams because he's your primary receiver. Devontae's not very fast, but he's a great receiver. Mac Hollins, taller guy, more if you're a Raider fan, more in that Andre Holmes kind of build, but a little bit faster. That cuts down on Renfro snap counts. And without Waller on the field, even though I like Foster Moreau a lot, or Morrow rather, it makes the offense less dynamic. So when you take away snaps from a guy like Renfro and then try to put him in on third downs, everybody's keying in on him. So it's just about allocating snap count better, not having to rely on a fullback to run the ball. And I think Josh Jacobs is good enough where you don't have to do that. And I think Josh McDaniels should figure that out eventually. But some of it is schematic, and some of it is just the amount of time that players are actually on the field. And Hunter Renfrow has not seen the amount of snaps that he has in years past. And I think that's a big indicator that maybe Josh McDaniels doesn't know how to use him yet, or hasn't figured out a way to effectively use him. So.
Yeah, man, we'll see. We'll see what goes on in Jacksonville this weekend. I think that this is kind of a must-win for them. And, I hate saying shit like that, but it hasn't been good. It has not been good. So we shall see. Going through the Week 8 games, is there any game in particular that happened this weekend that wasn't Raider or Niner related that stood out to you?
Let me pull them up here. I'm trying to think. You know what?
Yeah.
I think the most entertaining game was for me was probably Dolphins Lions.
Mm.
That was a really fun one to watch. Dolphins coming from behind. Panthers still putting up a fight a couple of weeks now, after 3 weeks now, really,
Yeah.
after firing their head coach. So that was pretty cool to see.
By the way, so the whole DJ Moore fiasco. I remember. Do you remember? God, it was like 20 years ago. So the Browns were gonna beat the Chiefs in a game, I think on like week 1 opener, and their linebacker, like Dwayne Rudd, I think took his helmet off a missed field goal. But because he took his helmet off, there was a penalty on the play. So the Chiefs got to got to do a kick again and beat the Browns like 40-39. I don't know why that game sticks out to me, but I just remember like times in NFL history where someone taking their helmet off backfired, and that happened on Sunday with DJ Moore. That game looked like it was over. All the Falcons had to do was pick up a first down. They didn't get it, and then DJ Moore, showing why the Panthers shouldn't trade him either, catches a long touchdown pass. He takes his helmet off in celebration, but that leads to a penalty and a 40-yard extra point, and Eddie Pinheiro misses it. And then they go to overtime, and Eddie Pinheiro misses it again, and the Panthers lose. And this is a terrible way to lose, but very entertaining game. Very entertaining game between two. The Falcons lead the NFC South, but I don't think for too much longer. I got to think eventually, and maybe I'm just stuck in my ways of a year ago of expecting what teams will be good and which teams will be bad. But I got to believe the Buccaneers are going to eventually win that division, because I'm not buying the Falcons yet. I'm not buying really anybody else in that division right now. But yeah, that was a hard one to watch for the Panthers with all what they're going through right now, kind of selling. Yeah,
And they're
just a hard-
fighting. They're fighting
Yeah.
really hard
Yeah.
still.
Yeah, they're fighting.
They're kind of like the Lions in a lot of ways. They're not a great team. They're not very talented, but they will give you a tough match. You'll probably beat them, but they'll give you a tough
Yeah.
matchup. I like that Ravens Buccaneers game on Thursday night. That was kind of good. That was pretty fun to watch. I thought the Ravens did a good job in that game. And did you wake up to watch the Broncos Jags game?
I did, yeah. I mean, my routine is usually to wake up and kind of put it on the background when I'm kind of still waking up in the morning. I had it on the background when me and Steven were doing our Sunday show, but yeah, that was an all right game. Two teams that are kind of struggling, and you didn't know what was going to happen come trade deadline with both teams. If one of them lost, were they going to trade away pieces? So yeah, I mean, that's a game the Broncos should win. And the Jaguars were favored, so yeah, just a interesting season for both teams. You thought both were going to improve a season ago. I'm with you on the Dolphins and Lions game. Lions had a big lead to start off, 21-7, and then the Dolphins just have a better offense, and Tyreek Hill has been just catching everything and the yards he's getting. So
Tyreek
they're-
Hill with Tua is like when Tua had Henry Ruggs, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
He can just throw it out there, and Tua's great at that. It's been amazing to watch.
But yeah, the Dolphins come back in that game and win that one 31-27. I don't think that Zeke Elliott should be running the football for the Cowboys anymore. Tony Pollard rushes for 131 yards, 3 touchdowns. The Cowboys explode for 49 points, and I thought that game was going to go under. Micah Parsons doesn't get touched on the fumble recovery, returns it back for a touchdown. That's I liked on the broadcast, like they were saying, like that's the only time that Justin Fields' athleticism kind of screws him, because he jumps over Micah Parsons and doesn't touch him. So that one I thought was pretty interesting with actually the Bears, I just don't know how they beat the Patriots, but it was pretty interesting how the Cowboys were able to put up that many points, and I think they have a running back going forward.
Yeah, no, they do. Pollard has shown a lot over the past couple of years now for the Cowboys, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, Zeke doesn't have the burst that he used to anymore
No,
as
not at all.
well, and he's shown that really over the past almost 2 years fully. So yeah, I mean, Cowboys are dangerous. They're very sneaky. If anybody's lucky,
And they had good
then-
defense.
yeah, and they have a great defense. And Micah Parsons is the last time I saw a game wrecker like him. I have to go back to like Khalil Mack. That's the kind of player that
he's close to that kind of player.
No,
He's
he
a
is.
force.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he reminds me a lot of Khalil Mack, and he's probably your leading contender for Defensive Player of the Year right now, if I had to say.
Yeah, and he would deserve it. I mean, if it was right now, he totally get it.
But
Yeah,
it's never
Cowboys are
right now.
no, it's never right now. The
I
Cowboys are
just,
scary good.
I just love that phrase in sports. Like if the season ended today, well, it
Yeah.
doesn't end today.
If it did end today, though, the
That'd be a short
Patriots
ass season.
it'd be a very short season. We'd all be very disappointed. And I'd feel bad for anybody whose last game of the season to watch was Commanders Colts, which was 17-16. But the Patriots, I thought, had a really good comeback against the Jets.
Yep.
Not that they can just to get back into their winning ways. They needed that in the worst way.
They did.
I
But
think
that game could have flipped if a roughing the passer call was not called on the pick six that Mac Jones threw.
yeah, that was bad. So
That-
he's making some sophomore like slumpy mistakes, which they've not been good.
They're given a reason to play Bailey Zappi, but Bailey Zappi didn't look great against the Bears a week ago either. But I think the telling thing in that game was Zach Wilson just like I don't know if he was distracted by the gilfs in the crowd, but good lord, man, though some of those passes he was throwing, oof.
Yeah, he probably maybe his someone's mom's friends were in town, and he was more
By the way,
concerned with
I
that.
meant to say milfs, not gilfs. He's not.
Gilfs
Yeah,
could be
grannies.
That's cool too.
Whatever you're down for.
Sorry, Zach. But yeah, no, some of his throws were errant, and
Just
that's
terrible.
that's the kind of player he is right now so far through his NFL career. He
I
can
know,
have-
but like, and then Jets fans are like, "Did we make the wrong pick with this guy?" You can't do that again. You can't be like, "Oh, we tried 2-3 seasons with Sam Darnold, and we're going to do the same thing with Zach Wilson." No, this is your guy.
yeah, they do it every time too. And Darnold, I thought, was supremely talented, but the Jets have a good way of making really talented quarterbacks not very good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look at what Geno Smith's doing in Seattle right now. He's been great.
Speaking of them, they had a great win over the Giants, 27-13. You saw in that game Tyler Lockett drop a pass, perfect pass that was going to be beautiful, and then he drops it, and Pete Carroll gives him some words of encouragement, and then later on he finds him in the end zone. The Seahawks are a very interesting team that I like the brass or I should just say like I guess the confidence of Pete Carroll and John Snyder with, okay, Russell Wilson, you want to go? Go ahead. And the whole season, the offseason, I should say, the thought was they're going to be terrible. They're going to play Geno Smith or Drew Lock, and they're going to just have a bunch of rookies and bad quarterback play, and they're going to suck. And the whole time, Pete Carroll was like, we're going to be a good team. We're going to be a good team. And that guy could coach his ass off. And I don't know how much longer he's going to coach in this league, but they are surprising the hell out of me. I don't know if in the end they'll win this division or be a playoff team, but they're doing a lot better than anybody thought. So to beat the Giants, who, they've been pretty good this season as well. They get their second loss of the year, but thoroughly impressed with the Seattle Seahawks so far.
Seahawks have been really fun to watch. They have somehow turned Geno's. Hey, look, give a lot of credit to Geno Smith. He's been around the league for just about 10 years now, and he must have been putting an ample amount of work in as well to get himself to this level. He's playing outstanding, and comeback player of the year, maybe something like that. I mean, he's definitely deserving of it. If it was
you know
right,
what? Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. So he's a guy who could totally get that. That's a great story. And you took the words out of my mouth. Pete Carroll coaches his freaking ass off. That man always has his team motivated. He is always fired up on the sideline. He's a defensive guru. He knows everything there is to know about what his team needs to do to defeat the opposition. And they're just damn good. And they are a team that is very mentally tough. They can get past things like Lockett screwing them over by not catching an easy ball. There are a lot of teams that can't get past that, where a guy's wide open and he drops it, and all of a sudden they can't score the rest of the game or get past the 50. So there's teams like that out there. And there's teams like the Seahawks who are very mentally tough and can battle through things. So they've been fun to watch. Giants shouldn't be worried about their second loss. What they need to be worried about, though, is when they really have to get into games with other teams like the Seahawks, who are just
Yeah.
going to be very well coached and keep coming at them. Because I think Dable can beat the inferior teams because he's good enough and that team is decent enough to do it. But the Seahawks have a master behind them, and they're a tough team to beat no matter who's on their roster.
No, definitely. Some other games that happened this weekend. Philadelphia Eagles, they just beat down the Pittsburgh Steelers to get their record to 7-0. And AJ Brown, probably the biggest off-season acquisition so far this season, catching 3 touchdown passes. I think the Eagles, yeah, you can make the argument that it's them, the Chiefs, the Bills. Bills, Eagles, probably the top 2 right now, but they're just a dominant team, and they sacked the hell out of Kenny Pickett on Sunday. Getting Robert Quinn's going to make them that much more lethal. I think they're the best team in the NFC, hands down, obviously by their record. So just another beatdown performance from them.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett, I feel for him. It's his rookie year, and he's not on a good team, and he's a hometown guy, which amps up the pressure even more. It's very tough, but he hung in there. He did take a beating, that's for sure. But to the winners, the Eagles. I mean, going to Pittsburgh, crushing your state, interstate foe or whatever, and so that's really good. And man, Jalen Hurts. He had a good season last year, and he is crushing it this year.
Yeah, we were, me and Steven were talking about it on Sunday, where we were talking about whether or not Alvin Kamara was going to be traded, and I guess the rumor was that if the Saints were going to get a first-round pick in return from the Eagles, who traded away, they had a deal earlier this year in the draft where they traded away their first-round draft picks. If they were to get a draft pick back, then they would have traded Alvin Kamara to the Eagles. Obviously, things changed with the performance that Alvin Kamara had on Sunday. But I think the Eagles wanted to have 2 first-round picks next season in order to package them together in case things don't go well quarterback-wise. The biggest question mark this whole season has been, they got everything. Running backs, wide receivers, offensive line, defensive line, secondary, linebackers, obviously. But do they have the quarterback? And I think so far Jalen Hurts has been great. Honestly, right there with Josh Allen maybe for MVP conversation, even though he doesn't have the passing numbers, but he did throw 4 touchdown passes on Sunday.
He's efficient. He's efficient in what he does. When he does pass it, it's usually with bad intentions behind it, and it works out.
Yeah. My thing is he did have a good season last year, a solid season, got him in the playoffs, but that playoff game against the Buccaneers, it was tough to complete passes for him. And you just want to see what he does in the playoffs. This team is Super Bowl ready. It's just a matter of if Jalen Hurts is Super Bowl ready.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Is Jalen Hurts ready to have a game where he needs to maybe stand in the pocket and deliver throw after throw at times? And we don't know yet because we really haven't seen him have to do that a lot of times. He's so dynamic. It's similar to Josh Allen earlier in his career. Josh Allen now, I think, has totally evolved into a complete passer. He's very close to it. And so we'll see if Jalen can keep getting the arm going in the direction it needs to go. I'll tell you what, playing that year with Lincoln Riley, I think, helped a lot.
You're right.
That has definitely helped him a lot in the NFL. So, yeah, the Eagles are a bad team. There's a reason they're undefeated. And it's kind of crazy saying this Eagles team is the best team. Yeah, I mean, by record, they're the best team in football. You can't put the Bills above them.
Speaking of the Bills, they beat the Packers for to give the Packers a 4-game losing streak, and that was a weird game. The Bills dominated the first half. Josh Allen kind of messed around and threw some bad interceptions in the second half. The Packers were just running the football to get something going offensively, but even though the Eagles are 7-0, I still think the Bills are the best team in football. And they have the most potential going forward, from their quarterback to their defense to everything.
Yeah, no, Josh Allen's amazing. Their defense is amazing. Their home field atmosphere is amazing. A playoff game there, a championship, an AFC championship game is going to be very tough there. A divisional game is going to be very tough there. I watched that whole game. I actually thought that if there was a game that the Packers that everybody kind of writes them off in, like what we were talking about last week.
What even Aaron Rodgers said.
Yeah, what even Aaron Rodgers said. We're going to get our asses kicked up there. We're going to go get embarrassed, all that stuff. that this would be the one where they really put up a fight and win. And there were glimmers of that at times,
At times.
but they're just not threatening. They don't. Their offense is. It's amazing to say this with Aaron Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks that I've ever seen ever in my life. They're toothless. They don't have like something that strikes fear into your heart other than Aaron Rodgers.
But it should be the running game.
It should be. No, and you've talked about this. They have Dylan, like they have Jones, like they have good players that they can get the ball to in an easy way, handing it off. And you said this earlier in this podcast. We've harped on it the last 3 weeks. Run the damn ball. Like
when you have a lead.
When you have a lead, and they haven't done it when they've had a lead.
Not when you're down 17 points.
Not when you're down 17 points. Maybe run the ball a little bit earlier. Try to control the clock. Keep it out of Josh Allen's hands. I mean, they're a mess right now, and they're like the Colts, who I was expecting to be a very good team.
Yeah,
and I knew the Packers would take a bit of a step back without Devontae, but it's just not working right now.
Yeah. Speaking of the Colts, they were in a close game against Sam Ehlinger, his first start. They're up 16-10, and I could smell them losing that game. Just they're up 16-10, and anything could happen. And I got to be honest, I haven't watched a ton of that game. I had it on with Red Zone, but Sam Ehlinger, from what I saw, looked a little solid. It's just the fact is that Taylor Heineke is the more experienced quarterback at this point, and he just gives them more life on the Commanders. So, that was a it was a close game, but not the best game to watch.
Taylor Heineke wins those games. Okay, let me tell you something about Taylor Heineke. He's gonna lead the command. No, I'm just kidding. But he gives them juice, man. He gives them juice. Yeah, I mean, he's good. They're 4-4 right now after that win. I think the Colts have something in Sam Ehlinger. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but
I just can't see him being their starting quarterback for the future. This is just a thing to try out. Yeah. I think he's a backup. I have to watch more. I haven't watched a ton of this game, like I said, but I can't see them being comfortable with him as their future. Same thing with Taylor Heineke a little bit. Even though he gives them juice, the whole reason they wanted more, and they got Carson Wentz. And we'll see what happens when Carson Wentz comes back in a couple weeks. But yeah, the Colts, we'll see where this goes. I can't see Frank Reich keeping his job with how demanding Jim Irsay is as an owner.
Which is a shame, because Reich is, I think,
he's a good coach.
He's a very smart coach, and I think he does the right things. And you've seen what he did with an older Phillip Rivers, and it's not work. They went for it again now with another older quarterback in Matt Ryan. That didn't work out. You're probably right about Sam Ehlinger. He probably is a stopgap, and he probably is a backup guy, but you never know. Taylor Heineke, on the other hand, he does bring a lot of energy to the Commanders whenever he plays for them, but it's because he's a backup quarterback, and that's what backup quarterbacks are supposed to do. Taylor Heineke is a great backup quarterback. He comes in, he kind of runs around a little bit, makes some nice passes, has a flair for the dramatic, and gets the team sparked. And they have to elevate their play because they're playing with him. But, I watched the game. I mean, 17-16, it was one of those games where I just kind of had it, and I watched it replay, and I was like, okay, that's just a football game.
Yeah, I mean, it was a close game, and in the end, the Colts gave too many chances for the Commanders to come back in that game, and Taylor Heineke, kind of clutch at times. Not saying he's the best quarterback or anything, but he takes advantage of his the situations given to him, or the opportunities, I should say. Just to wrap it up with the other games that happened this weekend, Minnesota Vikings beat the Arizona Cardinals, 3 sacks from Zadarius Smith, and they look like the team to beat in the NFC North. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Derrick Henry just runs all over the Houston Texans once again. Malik Willis throws for 55 yards, but it doesn't matter. He was just there to hand off to Derrick Henry. And then the Monday night game, the Browns beat down the Bengals, and I think the Bengals just didn't know how to operate their offense without Jamar Chase. It will be a feeling out process, but the Browns just finally play up to their capabilities, being explosive with Amari Cooper and Nick Chubb doing his thing. So, yeah, that is your Week 8 slate. And just to give you an update, the Houston Astros finished things off. They went 5-0, so the World Series is tied at 2 apiece. So we'll see what happens tomorrow for an interesting Thursday because we get Game 5 of the World Series between a Philadelphia team and a Houston team, obviously the Astros and Phillies, and then the Thursday night game in Houston. So one game is in Philly, the World Series, and one game is in Houston between another Philly and Houston team. And we were talking about this earlier this week on our radio show, Tolbert and Copes. What game do you think will do better in each city? So, Philadelphia, do you think more people in Philly are going to watch the World Series or the Eagles?
World Series.
I agree with you on that one. Okay, what about in Houston? World Series?
Yeah, it's the World Series for
But
both.
it's football too.
It's football too, but I know this. Houston Texans fans are so fed up with their ownership and what's
Yeah.
gone on at Houston the last about year now with the whole Jack Easterby and all that kind of stuff. Like it's just
He
not
gone,
been
baby.
good.
He gone.
Yeah, he's gone. Like it's just not been good. So they're pretty fed up right now, and their team's not good. But I will have the World Series on, and I will also have on Thursday Night Football.
Oh yeah,
the ones
no, I'll definitely have both on.
The ones I feel bad for are Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit because
Yeah.
in the booth they're going to be watching the World Series. I mean, I know they're going to watch the game, but they're going to have the World Series on somewhere in there too.
No, I mean, well, I mean, Al's gonna be interested, and probably he'll say, well, for those of you that are watching the World Series, we got this, he'll make it seem like it was a great game, but
He will. It'll be fun. But yeah, hey, the really good thing is that they're not in the same city. That would have been really weird and probably
that
not
would have been fun for people that don't have to deal with it. Like I
Yes.
would have enjoyed like seeing that, but that would have been a shit show for Houston or Philly.
Well, and imagine them both being in Philly, right? Say they were both in
Yeah,
Philly.
if they were in Philly, yeah, that'd be a problem.
Yeah, it'd be a huge problem. I mean, both games would be sold out,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the cheap ticket would be the Eagles game. But
Have you ever been to Philadelphia and seen like are both stadiums close? The Lincoln.
yeah, I've been to Lincoln Financial Field. I don't remember how far away the Citizens Bank Park or Citizens whatever the field's called there for the Phillies, but that would be insane if they were both in the same city. But yeah, that's the game tomorrow, and yeah, the World Series. That's pretty zany, right?
Only happens because the game was rained out on Monday.
Is that the case?
Yeah, the MLB was trying to avoid going up against football altogether. That's why they didn't have a game on Sunday. They did have a game on Monday, but they, Cleveland Browns, Bengals, they thought they could compete with that. So they didn't want to do Thursday Night Football up against the World Series, but they can't avoid it now. So
I think we'll crush. Yeah, sorry.
No, but what about nationally? Do you think more people tomorrow will watch football or baseball?
I think baseball will have higher ratings than Thursday Night Football.
I don't think about that. I think overall the country, I think we're just so football crazy that I think the Eagles and Texans, despite the lack of sexiness with that game, I still think that's going to outrate Phillies Astros.
Can they? So are they able to track that with Thursday Night Football being on Amazon? Are those numbers put out there like they would be when they're on?
Oh,
CBS
that's a good point. I don't know how quickly we'll get those calculated. So that's a good point, actually.
So and the World Series is on Big Fox, so maybe that's
you know what
advantage.
That actually may go in their favor. But just to pick this game for tomorrow. So last week, you picked the Ravens, I picked the Buccaneers, and in the end, you got that one right. So I owe you something in the future, my friend. When we do more of these podcasts, I owe you like 2 chicken wings I got to eat because I'm a little behind. And
what a punishment.
I lost to Steven this week as well. So I got to do something for him on Sunday. But just as far as the game on Thursday, Philly at Houston, you got the team with the best record in football against the team with the worst record in football. The Eagles are 13.5-point favorites, and the over is at 45.5.
I hate this game because the Eagles are so good. It should just be an easy layup for them, and they should score like 30-something points, and the Texans score like 10, right?
Yeah.
And the Texans have an awful rushing defense, which is not good going against Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. That being said, 13.5 points is a lot of points. I'm going to take the Texans to cover, and I will take the over.
All right.
I think the
Texans
Texans
just to remember.
Yeah, I think the Texans will score a little bit with Davis Mills. somehow, and for some reason the Eagles will give them some charity points. I don't know why, but I just have it's a Thursday night game. It's weird. Throw everything out. I think that the teams will score more than they should, or Texans will score more than they should, and they should be able to cover nearly 2 touchdowns against the Eagles.
So sorry, you are taking the over.
Oh, yeah, taking the over. Yep.
So here's what I say. Every time that there's been a huge point spread this season, it seems to go in that favor. Like the Eagles dominated the Steelers a week ago, the Bills dominated the Steelers a couple weeks ago. So basically the Steelers have been the victim of a large point spread. And every time I've been hesitant, I think that it's just a lot of points to bet on one team, and I know it's a short week. But with how bad the Texans have been and how good the Eagles have been, I'm kind of buying into this. So I am going to take the Eagles to win, and I'm going to lay the points. I do think it's going to be a blowout tomorrow. And I will go over.
Okay.
It was 40. You know what? Yeah, because I think the Eagles could score in the 40s probably. So, yeah, I'm going chalky. I think it's Eagles points over.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's the logical thing to do. It's Thursday night's just weird, and you know what? I will say this: it's very hard to win by double digits 2 weeks in a row. And if the Eagles are able to do that, that will show that they are a very disciplined and mentally tough team, or how bad the Texans are.
But they've been doing it all season long.
I know they have.
I'm trying to think of a close game. The Eagles. Okay, I guess week 1 against the Lions, but they did have a big lead on them and then just came back at the end.
Well, in the last 3 weeks, has their closest game been against the Cowboys, and they won like by 9?
Yeah, I think they won. Yeah, they won by 9. Yeah, I'm trying to think of close games.
They beat the Cardinals by 3. That was the one I was thinking of. Yeah,
That's
so their
right,
last 3 games, that's been the closest, and that was kind of fluky. So, other than that, they beat the Cowboys by 9, and then the Steelers, they shellacked them, really railroaded them last weekend. So, all right, we got our picks.
We got our picks, man. Alon, thank you as always, sir, for making time to do this. May see you next Wednesday. And thank you as always, man. So we'll see you guys on Sunday. Stephen Langford will join me for our Just Your pregame show, man. And we'll see you then. So, Alon, say what we always say on this fine podcast.
Hey, Derek, just your opinion, man.